Yes, we are dealing with the chapter 12th of Life Divine now. General considerations of this chapter might be analyzed for our understanding as an explanation of will to live. There is, and nowadays, we are taking up only general considerations before we take the chapter proper up. The will to live has been one of the, powers that has been noticed by some philosophers as the cause of continuation of existence. And then, of course, there are many things. Nietzsche, I think, brought it first into will to exist or will to live, and will to power. That was how he put it to himself. And mm, then men like Dr. Schweitzer and so on, they translate this will to live into, if it is to be used by men with any sense of his cultural values, then it must translate itself into will to love. You see, the will to live is this first impulse. And is it mere self preservation? That question they don't answer. They can't answer, you see. It's difficult to answer, I mean. Why there is will to live? That's it, that's one. And then, of course, will to conquer and will to expand. And that if you then transform that will into will to love, then you have a sort of a philosophy, active philosophy of life, by which you don't much explain to yourself the why and wherefore of the cosmos, but you have a code of conduct, so to say, a value of life by which you live, well, satisfactorily, so far as your outer mind is concerned, that you have tried to live the highest value that you could make for yourself. The philosophical explanation baffles naturally, because this is not an intellectual, answer which can satisfy fully the human inquiry. Here we are trying in this chapter to see into the cause of the will to live. Why there is this cause of will to live? Is it mere self-preservation or more? That is one. Secondly, what this chapter brings out is the place of pain in the scheme of things. Because as I yesterday pointed out, when we dealt with the delight of existence as a power of the infinite existence and consciousness, I pointed out how it was a little exaggerated view of the place of pain in scheme of human life that brought about a lopsided view of life and its remedy in Buddhism. And therefore, in this chapter, we might be able to place pain in its proper place. Pain, its utility, its what you call place in the economy of the universe, so to say. What place does it serve, if it serves at all? And also the possibility of not avoiding pain, but if possible, transforming pain. Buddha thought that that was one of the elements that was permanently connected with the cosmos. And pain is inseparable from the life, from universe, you see. Now, this chapter will show us that pain is not anything fixed, first of all, it is variable. And not only variable, but also, well, an element that can be transformed and changed. Well, if there is a possibility of transformation and change, then this chapter is also going to show us how pain is not only has a place in the scheme of universal evolution as a temporary stage imposed upon an evolving consciousness or evolving entity called man and animals, and it has a purpose to serve in the sense that it, well, serves as an index to note certain superficial reactions to universal contacts. And then, if the organism is capable of bringing out its inmost reality, then it is capable of being transformed. Well, there the problem of how comes afterwards, but possibility of transformation also is suggested. And then there is a possibility of diving into the cause of this suffering and pain. And why at all an infinite existence, consciousness, and delight chose or decided or moves into this channel of suffering and pain which we feel as undesirable element, well, there is a probing into the why. That's all that this chapter is going to tell us. Now we begin with the chapter proper. Infinite existence and infinite consciousness in infinite delight, that is at the root or the basis of all things that we see. That is how we have arrived at in up to chapter 10th, you see. And Life Divine wants to bring to our notice this idea that the reason for will to live is not merely self preservation, but this delight of existence, because delight is the secret of existence. Why preserve life? Because it is delightful to continue to live. There is a delight. Delight is not felt because delight is neutral to normal consciousness of the organism or man. But if it was not at the base supporting the impulse of self preservation, well, mere self preservation would be meaningless. Because the delight is there. Delight is a secret of existence or creation, if you like. And that's why the Upanishad says, Anandadadhyeva khalu imani bhutani jayante, tena jatani jivanti tasmine viliyate. They are born from delight, they are maintained by delight, and to delight they return, the whole creation, all beings. Who created this movement of the world out of that infinite self existence, consciousness, and delight? It is indivisible, infinite existence. And the world is a rolling out from that. By what power was it that it was brought into existence? The cosmos, the universe, the world as we know it. The world used by Veda in the original and also by subsequent some of the Upanishads also is Maya, which in the later terms, means later philosophical terminology of 9th and 10th century, underwent a radical change in its original meaning. Maya is from the root ma, to measure, to formulate, to cut from the original, piece and for a purpose. To measure out from the whole something for a definite purpose. That is called ma, to measure, to formulate, to formalize. Maya is the power of formulation, power of delimitation, or power of taking out from the original what would you need it for a purpose. That is called Maya, Ma, to measure out. Supposing you have a roll of cloth. Now, roll of cloth is all right as cloth. But if you want to clothe a child, if you want to clothe an elder, if you want to clothe a man, if you want to clothe a soldier, then you don't roll him in the whole roller. No. You take out the piece and you say, well, so much is this for this purpose, so much is this for this purpose, so much is this for this purpose, isn't it? So that we measure out. Now that is exactly how this is one sense in which we have to look at the process that must have taken place or that has seems to have taken place. A formative power of the Supreme has created the world which is, well, his measured out cosmos or measured out self expression. His measured out self expression, and it is therefore not unreal, because it is his own self that is measured out. There are people who say that in the power of self formulation, you can formulate a dream. But when you formulate a dream, the dream is real within you because it is in you. Dream is not false at all. Dream is the reality of yourself, is it not? You and your dream are one. There is no separation. It is only when you artificially divide your mental consciousness from it that you say dream was unreal. Dream within self, when it is actually being seen by the self and the dream are one. It's a part of the self, in fact, and therefore partakes the reality of the self. Even if you, grant the definition of a dream. Well, it is therefore real because the self is real. The form and the world, therefore, are eternal, accompaniments of this process of self-unrollment of an original reality. It is a creation of self-conscious being out of its own eternal truth. The substance of the world, therefore, is real existence. Our mind, when it looks at this creation, it says, you can grant an infinite consciousness, but the world that rolls out of it is illusion of that infinite consciousness. To us, it appears as if it is the illusion of that. We don't see that, but we see the illusion of that. To that, he replies by saying that this conception of the world as an illusion of the infinite is not, not the correct appraisement of our intellect, but it's only a shadow of our own mental sense of the infinite. Our own mind is sensing the infinite in that way, but really speaking, it partakes of the substance of the original truth and reality. Even if it's an illusion of infinite consciousness, it is only phenomenal, but essentially it is the substance of the real. It partakes of the nature of the self, nature of the infinite reality. Now, you should take this world related to the consciousness originally, creative of it, then it appears to our mind as a movement of force. Some force is moving out, activity. And this force, when it moves, it seems to obey some secret will within itself. That is how we see the force. See, it is not merely a force that is inconscient moving out to a chance, to a chaos, to a unrhythmic play of its vibrations. No, it's a force that moves out and it seems to be carrying out in its flow or obeying when it is working or actively moving some secret will, some play of original will within its own self. Infinite forms, world existence. Well, all this flowing out is an expression of an infinite play of that consciousness or energy or force. And it is also a play of infinite delight. Now, you call this delight Leela, a play. What is the kind of this play? It is in one sense purposeless, mentally purposeless. No mental purpose is there. A spontaneity about play. When you speak of play, you allege into it or you imply a spontaneity, a naturalness, not necessarily a set purpose in which you subject your will to attention. In play, your whole being is relaxed, is it not? Otherwise, it's not play. It is too much of a tension. Well, this spontaneity of movement is called play or lila. It is like a child's play or the poet's play in his own creation or an actor's play, if you like, and joy in what he is doing. It is eternally fresh, young, and inexhaustible. The play that is moving out is eternally young, inexhaustible, and creating and recreating himself within his own self. This consciousness is, yes, creating and recreating himself inexhaustibly in his own self for sheer bliss. That is the character of the Leela. That is the clear character of the play, where the player, and the playground are one. This is the play, the player, and the playground are all one. They are not divided. And this play of existence in relation to the eternal, infinite existence, infinite consciousness, infinite delight, Sachidananda, and the play of Sachidananda. Well, in relation to that, you call this play Maya or Prakriti or Leela, if you like. Power of self-measurement or self-formulation, power of objectivizing himself as playground, Prakriti, and you call it Leela, a spontaneous play of inexhaustible delight. Ordinarily, to our view, world is a movement of force and a constant and yet mutable rhythm. A constant rhythm is there, and yet that constant rhythm is constantly changing. So, a constant play of mutable rhythm, eternal and infinite delight of being, moving into infinite and variable delight of becoming. Delight of being infinite flows into, runs into, activates itself into a delight of becoming, which is, well, our perception of the world. Well, that is the root of creation. Delight of being moving into infinite and variable delight of becoming. That is the foundation. So, there is the one indivisible conscious being behind all experiences, supporting them by its inalienable delight. This support of the being full of delight, behind this variable, inexhaustible play of multiple variant rhythms of its own self, that is our true self. That is the true self of the human individual. The true self of the human individual is the one infinite delight self, throwing itself out into, pouring itself out into an infinite, inexhaustible delight of becoming. That is the true self of the human being or individual. So, that is the real self. Of mental self that we have is only a representative of that delight self. It's only a representative put forward for sensational experience in response to multiple contacts of the universe. There are multiple contacts of the actions and reactions. So, whatever contact or whatever shock of the universe is given to us, the mental representative of this being of delight is given to us for superficial reaction to it, you see, for a sensational experience of shocks of existence. Shock of existence to be rendered in terms of sensation. Essential delight is of consciousness, remember. Essential delight is not yet become sense experience. Delight is self-existent. That delight is rendered available to the evolving consciousness here in terms of mental consciousness. It is mental consciousness which represents that being of delight here. And how does it get that original delight, which is its cause of being, which is its cause of life and cause of its existence? It takes it only through sensation. And for having a sensation, a machinery is provided in the form of mental and nervous consciousness. Nervous consciousness and mental consciousness together receive the multiple shocks of the cosmos. And they render it in terms of pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference. They don't render all sensation in terms of delight, though fundamentally the object is to give the experience of that self-existent delight to the being which has evolved itself out of the inconscient. So mental consciousness is not decisive so far as the creation is concerned. It's only a representative put forward for sensational experience to respond to the multiple contexts of the universe, and it gives an imperfect response. It is not able to render a perfect response. Well, that is why there is pain and suffering. You see, that is one way of looking at the problem of why there is pain and why there is suffering. Original delight, which is infinite and full of variable rhythms, creating the cosmos, is flowing, and in its flow, it gives rise to a mental consciousness which is representative of the true self. And the contacts of the world are given to it in the form of sensation. Well, its response to the contacts is imperfect. That is why the imperfect response to the original delight renders itself in triple terms of, well, pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference. Well, what are the consequences of this limited being and limited response? Mental being, human being, man, limited in his mental consciousness and with a nervous apparatus given to him for reacting to outer contacts. Well, then that that though we are the one indivisible original delight self, yet the disposition of our sensational experiences, pain, pleasure, and neutral indifference is there. Though we are that in our original constitution, this experience into triple terms is there. And it is only a superficial arrangement created by that limited part of us which is uppermost in our waking consciousness. This triple reaction is created as a superficial necessity and temporary arrangement by the waking consciousness. Behind, if you go deep down, probably even the human mental personality has behind it an impersonal ground or plane where it is receiving the universal delight that is flowing throughout the creation without any distortion. It is able to contact that there behind and not on the surface consciousness of its waking being, you see. Behind there must be something much vaster than the human mental consciousness, than the superficial consciousness which we have, and which is capable of contacting impartially the delight universal that is flowing in the act of creation. The delight that is flowing must be available to man somewhere in his depth, you see, somewhere behind the surface consciousness. And it is this contact that supports the superficial being through all the labor, through all the suffering in the process of life. You see, you go into life and you see a man sometimes. You see, that is how one gets comfort in life sometimes. One is faced with tremendous suffering and he thinks, oh, the whole universal scheme is, cruel enough to with me most unjustly, and I am being, subjected to suffering and pain out of all proportion to my deserving, and so on. And suddenly, when the man goes out and sees somebody else, and he finds that, oh, perhaps I am better than this man, who knows? Well, he is worse off than myself so far as pain and joy is concerned. And you go still more further and you find the strata of poverty and, ignorance in life and suffering. And then when you meet that in life, you first of all ask if you are, sufficiently awakened as to why that man goes on living. Why should he live? See, a foot is amputated, hand is amputated, and he has to depend for everything on everybody, you see, and he doesn't want to die. Most surprising. We have seen in India, you see, poverty is, colossal, and there you see people and you wonder why this man should live, why should he live? It's much better to die. No, he won't die. It is that contact of that deeper delight. You see, it is not mere nothing. It's not mere nothing that he continues to live. You see, that contact is there, subtly unknown even to him, perhaps. Well, here it is that which supports the superficial being through all the labors and sufferings and unpleasant contacts of life. This I that man has evolved, or that is evolved in man, is only a trembling ray on the surface. But behind is a vast subconscious and also a vast superconscious, which receives all the contacts of the universal consciousness and being and delight. Behind, yes, it is there, and from there he receives the support of the delight. You understand? Yes, that's it. That is some idea of what is on the surface is only a superficial arrangement, something temporarily required to react to the contact of outside shocks of the cosmos, forces of air and light, and happiness and misery and wanting and not wanting and ego and all kinds of actions and reactions. They are all imperfect responses. Therefore, all of them are subject to pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference. But in spite of it, man continues. Because behind this trembling ray of ego or self, there is that vast subconscious, vast superconscious, which carries that vibration of the delight all through. And it is that which is subconsciously or unconsciously felt. In life, we dimly feel this self calm and joyous sometimes. And we know that this world is not its master. There, a man has gone through a great crisis. And if he can become conscious within himself, well, when he is alone by himself, he knows that all that has nothing to do with me. See, this world is not my master. This perception, even in the waking consciousness, can come to the human individual in our calmness. Because this that is in him is the radiation of the Lord. That is the true being that is in him. It can smile at nature, this self, and it can live in the delight self, the Anandamaya, behind the mental consciousness. Blissful. And this self is the truth of self. It is within ourself, though not easily available to us at present on our surface consciousness. Now, we come to the problem of pain. And then the first proposition which he wants us to consider is that pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference have no absoluteness about them. There is no point at which you can say, well, this must be painful. No, to somebody it is not painful. To yourself, when you are trained, it won't be perhaps painful. Certain things we cannot say must give pleasure, perhaps not. The scale of reception of sensation of pleasure and pain is a variable scale. It can move from here, from here, from here. You see, pleasure and pain can be here, but it can be here, pleasure and pain. It can be here, it can be here. So it is not a, there is no absoluteness about them. There is no also compelling necessity of their existence. You cannot say that, when your hand is cut, you must feel pain. Not at all. If the hand is rotten, when it is cut, you feel pleasure. You feel it's all right, it's better, it goes. Isn't it? And there are people who have a tremendous reaction like that. I gave you the instance of the soldier who got his whole foot amputated without anesthesia. Without anesthesia. I don't want that. He was afraid mortally of taking anesthesia. Then he got it cut. So this is very variable scale, and there is no compulsion about it. Secondly, it's a temporary and superficial arrangement. The scale of pleasure and pain that is given in neutral indifference, it is only a scale of temporary arrangement, of superficial necessity. And it becomes in man a habit only, really speaking, not a permanent and compelling part of his makeup, you see, a habit only, and it can be changed. One can return the response of pleasure to what now is pain or pain to what is now pleasure. And he can even train himself to give out the reaction of delight to all contact. To all contacts, one may react with delight. It's a question of training. There is no compulsion or absoluteness or necessity about them. That is one. And if you try to follow this process of possibility of changing the scale of pleasure and pain, you will yourself observe that in the mind it is very easy to attain this status or this poise. In the mind, you can always separate your mind from what is pleasure and pain, and either change the values or react only with the reaction of delight in the mind, because mind is elastic. The difficulty comes only in the nervous being, you see. The difficulty comes in the nervous being only and body. There is an obstinate persistence in the original reading or value of the sensations which you receive. But in the mind, it is easy to understand that elasticity is there, and therefore the conversion of pain and pleasure becomes not difficult at all. But in body and the nervous system, it is more difficult because it is governed by external nature and external contexts. And Even in body and nervous system, you can see that this scale of pleasure and pain can be changed, if not by the organism or the proprietor or the self of the man himself, under hypnotism. This, I don't know whether you have seen. Most surprising, when a man is put under hypnotism, when he is given sugar and says, how bitter it is, he throws it out. Now you see, now you are at such and such a place, and he makes him jump over and all over, and he gets all the bruises here and there, and he is very happy. So this reaction of body and nerves even can be so thoroughly altered on the level of the body, not by one's own reaction, because that requires a lot of training, perhaps in a transformation, but by a control from outside. Then the body reaction and nervous reactions are, the scale is changed completely. It is possible, therefore. We are only looking at the problem as a how far this is compelling and how far it is possible to change it, is it not? That's the problem we are tackling. And so he says that in bodily, the reactions in hypnotism and suffering, the scale is completely changed. There is no suffering in going through acts which normally are very hard to bear. Secondly, the place of this pain in the scheme of nature is also to be observed. We have to see that this pain is not without its utility, especially on the nervous level. When the pain is given, it is a warning of nature that the contact is dangerous, isn't it? When you get pain, that means to say the contact which you have is dangerous, so that it's like a danger signal. Pain is not without its utility, even for the preservation of the organism. Pain on the nervous level, particularly when it comes, it's a sign that please take care. There is something to be guarded against. Yes, so it's a warning of nature. In fact, yes, a pain is nature's device for attaining transitional ends. And one of the ends is to give warning to the organism of danger, possible, disaster or something. And it is to help this temporary, experience is meant to help the evolution of this I to a further stage. This I is to be trained to return other responses to outside contacts. Pain is one to make it begin, and it can learn to react to pain quite differently than it's accustomed to. It is first training is to recoil from dangerous and harmful contacts, and warning to avoid danger. Pain is not present in the inconscience of matter. I think Gerard Hard has written a book, Pain, Sex and Time. It is almost adaptation from Sri Aurobindo's outlook. These people steal without acknowledging. I will tell you. This is a clever way of doing things, but it's all right. Nothing wrong in the world of mind. You can always do it. There's nobody's property. But they always go on doing like that. You see, pain, sex, and time, he wants to prove in that. Roughly, I went through some portion of it and I saw it was all right. It's a clever way of taking things like that here and there. And you see, if you give total structure, then it is justice to the original. When you take it parts and you leave them, unrelated, well, you don't give the man the satisfaction that you have given him a whole. After all, life divine, when it is given, it gives you a, whether you accept or not, that's another matter. It's rational and gives you a total structure, architecture. These people, when they take one portion from here, another portion from there, third portion from here, and make up something which is neither, here nor there, it doesn't make much. He wants to prove that pain, sex, and time give you the three, levels of rise of organism in the process of evolution. You see, with the pain, the evolution begins of the living organism or vital being. And in sex, it reaches a certain animal level, so to say. And in time, you come to mental consciousness. But that's a rough way of putting what he says, and I don't bother about what he said. It is just to show that below the living organism in matter, there is no experience of pain. There may be vibrations only. You can lead positive and negative if you like, but there is no cognizing sense subject to feel pleasure, pain, or indifference, you see, neutrality. Well, pain begins with life in matter and grows with the mental consciousness in man. When mind is free and unegoistic, then probably pain also would become much less. You see, when the mind becomes less egoistic and less attached to the personal, then perhaps pain also would become less in its at least incidence on the consciousness. Elimination of pain therefore seems possible because they are currents of the delight of existence coming to us as pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference. Therefore, the conversion must be possible. A transformation of pain into the original delight should be possible theoretically and metaphysically. You see? What is the cause of this wrong reception instead of receiving the delight? Why is it that it is received as pleasure, pain, and indifference? The cause, according to whom, is the psychological division from the original consciousness. The self division is the cause, or acceptance of, or running into a limited egoistic consciousness. Well, that is the cause of the wrong reaction to the original delight. Instead of receiving universal contact, one reduces himself to a small being and reduces the universal to individual contact. And the universal contact coming through the individual, machinery or individual, small channel, well, it completely changes its character from delight into pleasure, pain, and indifference. That is how it happens. Instead of trying to contact or having a universal reception to the context of the world, well, one reacts from the point of division and it's an egoistic consciousness piecemeal, one by one by one. To the universal all contexts of things, there is always attached the universal delight. The sap, as they call it, the rasa in Indian terminology, you see, through all universal movements, the universal delight is flowing all the time. It is not lacking, so that if one, and what it is possible, that all things have this sap, and to all contexts, the taste of the sap is possible. The sap of universal delight. You see, it is called rasa. And the Upanishad said in one of its great small epigrammatic sayings, Raso Vaisaha, he the supreme is of the essence of delight. Rasa is a sap of delight. The ultimate truth of the supreme is, well, essentiality of delight. Well, and we don't receive it because we look to the manner in which this flow is there and not to the essence. We don't look to the essential thing, but we look to the manner, outer form of it, you see, as it affects us. How does it affect my desire? How does it affect my fear? How does it affect my craving? How does it affect my ideas? Well, how does it affect myself? That is why it is deformed. This universal delight is deformed because in the reception, well, there is a looking to the egoistic, center, and how it affects that to the manner and not to the essence. And this creates in the human being inability to seize this essence, this taste of universal delight. Now you say that universal delight is flowing. How do we know? Is there any proof? There is plenty of proof. This is not the place, life divine, but apart from it, there is plenty of proof that there is such a flow of universal delight. Only man is not able to cognize or seize it or to experience it. Only in rare moments when the mind becomes disinterested Heart also becomes pure or disinterested, and you see, it becomes can put its detachment on the nervous system, then it can feel this delight, universal delight also, and eliminate pleasure, pain, and indifference also. And gradually you can completely be free from this triple reaction. We go nearest to this in our appreciation of all arts. You take poetry, you take drama. In the drama, man can actually take the delight of the tragic, the horrible, the repellent, the terrible, is it not? Something terrible is happening, right? Because your ego is taken out of the reactions, is it not? We are not in the bargain, so we can look at what is happening absolutely in a detached way, impersonal way, and we have actually the delight of having seen a tragedy. Even if you weep, still you enjoy the weeping, I mean the suffering. That this is something, wonderful. Though it doesn't affect you. It's not personal pleasure, it is that essential universal delight which you feel through what to ordinary reaction or to the mere personal would have been suffering, you see. So we come nearest to this in our aesthetic perception of things, in art and in poetry. We taste this essential delight of the sorrowful, the terrible, the horrible, and the repellent, because we are detached and not thinking of ourselves at that time. We are not thinking of what we are experiencing. Yeah. This is, of course, not the pure form of that delight, but still it takes us very near to that universal delight. So it shows that the delight is there. We are only concerned with the actuality of the thing. Now, pain is one. Suffering comes to man, and then man is born to asking how suffering happens. That suffering is really speaking due to the failure of this conscious force in man to meet the contact of the cosmos, some contact of the universe. It is a shocks of experience or existence. When the conscious power in man is not able to meet the shock, then what we call suffering is the result in psychology. I mean, suffering is the experience that one gets. Now, how to eliminate this? Just as pain can be eliminated, limitation of pleasure, pain, and indifference can be eliminated and is actually eliminated in our aesthetic experience. Can we eliminate suffering? Yes, there are 3 or 4 methods by which suffering can be eliminated completely by a slow and gradual training. One is by titiksha. Titiksha means well, endurance, training oneself to endurance. It was the philosophy of I think the Greek philosophers, I forget the name. It's Stoics, is it not? Yes. Yeah. The Stoics. It was not to train you to cruelty or to hardness. No, it was to train the psychology to an equal reaction to pleasure and pain. That was the basis. That is one of the schools of Indian philosophy also. Titiksha is to bear the contact, to endure, power of endurance. If happiness comes or happy contact comes, you take it without elation. If a unhappy contact comes, you take it without depression. This is a question of training. One can train oneself. You see, when you first go into the cold climates, well, you acclimatize yourself gradually and return the contact of, well, bearing to cold, bearing to heat. Well, body is trained by endurance. Psychological part of us can be trained by this endurance. Power of endurance can be induced, can be trained, can be brought to a state of almost a perfection, so to say. That is one. Facing and enduring and conquering the shocks, you see, of life. That is one. Then equality, training oneself to equality, equanimity. Not endurance, but equanimity. That is to say, a stage of undisturbed serenity. It's not power that is at the back of endurance. In endurance, your will is more at work. In equanimity, a state of, detachment and impersonality is at work. And there, one faces the contact by a sort of a impersonality, looking at the thing as if the thing was happening to some third person. Equality or samatha, if you like to call it, means equal indifference to or equal gladness. Either equal gladness or equal indifference to all contexts, either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, by training oneself to in all contexts. Hmm. It is called in Sanskrit udasinata, you see, sitting on the top, sitting on a hill and looking at what is happening to the mind or nervous system or to the heart. So that when you are sitting on the hill or on the top, well, that which is happening to your nature personality is not able to affect you. You know that, oh, this man has got disturbed, but it's all right. Well, you are undisturbed on the height of detachment. Udasin, sitting above. Well, yes. Then you can convert this contact into, well, some anand, equal bliss of all contacts, and all embracing bliss by taking also to a path of surrender and losing the ego in the universal, all pervading equal delight, or in the supreme. A fourth path also is open to one to accept all contact that come with an attitude of surrender. Nati, it is called nati. You see, whatever comes is accepted as, well, something sent from the Supreme or given as an act of grace. Then the contact, though very, painful or full of possibility of suffering, well, all its sting is taken out of it. I mean, occurrence does not change, facts remain, events are there, but the sting of it is taken out. I give one instance which is one of the many that are known and absolutely valid. There was Ramatanu Lahiri, one great devotee in Bengal when Ramakrishna was living, and he was a great devotee. He was a householder running all his business as usual and doing his work and so on. And he had a son who was in the medical college studying. Now, in the last year of the college, the boy had some difficulty and trouble and disease and died. Now, every Saturday or Sunday, there used to be a meeting of devotion in his house. A small group, as we are meeting like that, 30, 40, 50% used to meet in his house. So that day was the day on which those people had to meet. So what he did was to put his, son's corpse in another room, and the meeting came because nobody came, nobody was weeping in the house, you see. And so when the people came, they sat down at their meeting, at bhajan or kirtan or discussion, their meditation, everything as usual. While going, the neighbors told some of these people that yesterday his son has died. And so they asked, they said, yes, well, death comes to all, to everyone. And for that, a daily occurrence, why should we put off something which we have projected and which is certainly a desirable thing to do? After all, it is good. We have to meet. What's the use of postponing something which is good to do because, well, what is happening every day has happened in my house. Yes, and then they were surprised to see that the corpse of the boy was in another room, just the same next room, and nobody in the house ever gave an inkling that there was anything. Well, this is possible. This is out of nati. When his wife was on the point of weeping, he went and told her, look here, if your son had gone to, Bhagalpur, means that place where they were, well. What would you do? Would you be weeping here? You would not weep if you went to Bhagalpur, 200, 300 miles from Calcutta. So if you went, well, now he has gone somewhere. Oh, what is there to weep? That's what he actually told. This is from his biography. But that is another attitude. I'm only trying to show you that one can adopt and accustom himself to an attitude of surrender to such an extent that he can take whatever event comes to him as something intended by a supreme power, and from which he has got to learn something. That's all. It is not necessary all the time. All this, you see, and this shows you the limits of human psychology and its possibilities. When you all the time study the nervous system and make generalizations on, on thousands of cases, it is of no importance because the possibilities of development are infinite. You cannot know how far. You see, the human consciousness can be trained to react to outside contacts. Then to generalize on the basis of these so-called normal contacts, which are not rules but only habits long established. That's all. But these habits are quite changeable, and habits could be certainly given up or I mean, completely eliminated. Well, yes. So it is possible by first giving a neutral reaction to turn it into an all-pervading equal delight of existence. To realize an all-pervading delight as a next step to an indifferent reaction is possible. Now, the question then one can ask, and very often people who have not thought about this question do ask, that if delight is the core, original substance, maintaining power, and the end of all universe, why do we not see it? We don't see. He is trying to show that our perception has to become a little, careful about it. Delight is there in matter, but it is self-gathered, absorbed and subconscious in the basis of physical universe. And then it takes up a neutral movement, which is not yet a sensation. Vibration in matter is the only thing that we notice. And this vibration, scientists say, can be classified into positive and negative. And when the two meet, it is neutral. Is it not? This is all right. You can say, perhaps the positive is pleasure, we don't know. Because you must go into matter to know what matter feels like. But positive is there, a classification. Negative is there, which might be pain. And this meeting of positive and negative becoming neutral might be neutral indifference. But in actual process of evolution, what we see is that in matter there is no experience of joy. That is true. There is a neutral movement also afterwards of life, but it has not yet reached the stage of sensation. You see, life in an elemental stage is not sensation. It is elemental, you see. Primordial beings like dinosaur and so on. If you study, the sensation has not become yet, organized properly. There is only elemental force of life, an impulse. They embody only the the impulse of life, not yet the full scale of sensation. It's not yet a sensation. And then from there comes the growth of mind and ego, when you get the triple reaction of pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference in the scale of evolution. And here we get this triple reaction because of the limitation of the force of our consciousness in the form and exposure to shocks of the universal nature, which are alien to this ego which has come into existence. And therefore, the ego feels itself out of harmony with the total. That's why there is a pain, pleasure, and neutral indifference. This ego, which is evolved, has the triple scale pleasure, pain, and neutral indifference because it is, first of all, limited, returns a wrong reaction or partial shocks to the environment, and because it is out of harmony. What is the solution? Solution is that in this mental consciousness of man or in the human consciousness, there should take place the emergence of Sachidananda. The conscious coming out of that infinite delight of existence should now be the solution. It should be possible to evoke the emergence of Sachidananda in its own creations. Universality, equality, self-possession and conquest of nature. This should now become possible because that possibility partly is indicated by the subliminal and by the universal behind the organized consciousness of man's egoism. Egoism only a partial point, throbbing. Behind it is the subliminal, subconscious, and the superconscious. Well, it should be possible to evoke the superconscious Sachidananda into expression here in life. And why this movement has at all taken place in the Sachidananda, in the supreme infinite existence, consciousness, and delight? Philosophically, this question has been always put and very difficult to answer to the satisfaction of demanding reason. You see, why this has taken place at all? Because mind is subsequent to this flow of delight, and after, you see, what comes into existence afterwards is asking the cause of that of which, well, it is the result, is it not? Mind is subsequent to this self-existent delight, and this mind is asking what can be. There was no mind when the delight flew out into creation, you see, and there was no cause and effect, even possibility of demanding, because the consciousness was not there. We are demanding, our mind is demanding the explanation of something, well, which happened when mind, well, has, where mind has no jurisdiction, in fact. You see, but that is mind, you cannot refuse this right to the mind. Why this one takes delight in this movement? Well, one answer is that all possibilities are there in the infinite. All possibilities are there, latent in its infinity. And the delight of existence lies precisely in this variable realization of its own possibilities. What is lying in the original one, infinity, as infinite reservoir of possibilities, the delight also is there in the realization of infinite variable possibilities. Original existence is delight, full of infinite potentialities. It is true, holding all that is in seed form, so to say, in an eternal and infinite delight. But the delight also is there in realization of the variable and varying possibilities of its own potentialities, isn't it? Yeah, it cannot be necessarily either a compulsion or want of delight that drives it to realize its variable delight in realizing the potentialities that are within its own self. And earth consciousness, in earth consciousness, one possibility is worked out here of that delight. And it begins by concealing of that delight here. On this earth level, on the level of life where we live, the possibility is trying to realize itself here. And the possibility to us takes the form of concealment of this Sachidananda to begin with. We don't see the infinite delight, existence, and consciousness at work at all. And it is hidden in that which is the very opposite of Sachidananda, matter, inconscient, is it not? So this possibility of the infinite is that which seems it houses itself in what seems to be its opposite, and then it sets about a process of self-finding. Sets about a process of self-finding, even in the midst which are most opposite, even in terms that are absolutely opposed to it. This is a paradox, and this is what you call a problem which omnipotence alone can solve. That is why when somebody says that why God has created ignorance, it's because God alone can create ignorance, because He alone can eliminate it. Divine alone can bring and inflict ignorance upon Himself, because He has within Him the capacity or the omnipotence and omniscience to overcome that ignorance which is his own creation, which is his own self in another way. You see? Infinite being loses itself in the appearance of non-being first and imagines in the and emerges in the appearance of a finite soul. Infinite consciousness loses itself in the appearance of superficial limited consciousness, and infinite delight loses itself in appearance of insensible matter, discordant rhythm of life, varied in pleasure, pain, and neutral feeling, and infinite unity loses itself in appearance of chaos of multiplicity, and then emerges in discord of forces and beings, seeking to recover that unity, seeking to recover that unity by possession, by dissolving, by devouring each other. That is what it is doing. Well, the solution lies in reaching the source and emergence of Sachidananda in the play. Then there will be the resolution of the disharmony and conflict. Man, in this creation, Sachidananda has to emerge, therefore. Man has to become universal, and mental consciousness has to be transformed into or changed into superconscient, where unity is the law and each embraces all. And then the narrowness is lost and universal love, the vital restricted being, returns equal shock to the whole universal contact, and then it becomes capable of universal delight. The physical even has to know the one with an indivisible force that is all. And individual's nature has to reproduce the nature of the original creating divine delight, the nature of the Sachidananda, which is perfect. Well, then it is always the same delight, oneness in all, a harmony realized by the realization of the Supreme Sachidananda. Well, that might give us the resolution of the problem. Delight is the solution and delight is the problem. You want to have the delight, and reaching delight is the solution. Well, to that end today. Not two.
Chapter 12, is that right?
Yes, this is 12.
What is the title of that chapter?
This is delight.
Delight.
Same as the last. Solution and delight as a problem. That was it. The will to delight, really speaking.
Christ said, he that loses his life shall find it.
Yes.
He said a great many.
Yes, I'll tell you how it is. It is like this. I am the resurrection and the light. I am the resurrection and the light. And he that liveth and he that believeth in me, even though he were dead, yet shall he live. And he that liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Is it not? That's the text.
I think I mentioned it before. Identical with the teaching Sri Aurobindo. He said, why do you weep? Greater than I.
Yes.
It shall come thee. Truth. The truth shall be your comforter. The truth consciousness, in other words, wouldn't that mean?
Yes, it is the realization of the original, original creative impulse, you see, the creative truths.
Which you definitely think.
Yes. See, first of all, Bible is not the expression of Christ's personal exposition. This is one difficulty. So we know that it should be 90% authentic because there was no reason why they should say something which was not authentic. But still, it is not as if, well, he said, I want to now put in words or put in language what I want to say. Then it would carry the stamp of his authority. I mean, now it does carry an indirectly, like Buddha also. The same thing has happened to Buddha. We have no authentic exposition of Buddha in his own language. We don't know. But Sutta, the first, exposition by his disciple, well, has preserved many of his words. And we say from that, well, what Buddha has said, and I think most probably he did. But Buddha did not sit down to say, now let me put my understanding of man, his problem, and the universe in language. Well, then we would have been satisfied. You see that we have an authentic exposition. So, with regard to Bible, that is one great difficulty. The authenticity of the Bible, so far as it concerns the responsibility of Christ, is certain in doubt. You see. We take it well honesty that yes it is true, but it is so piecemeal. I mean, it's so cut off that you can't make a total view of the how he looked at the world. I see something about creation, something about life, something about suffering, something about spirituality, something about realization, something about liberation, something about rules of conduct. All are there. Everything here, one there, like that. But a picture of the cosmos, you see, and the why and wherefore of it, and probing into the causes and the profundities of it, and then giving it not merely a philosophy, but also a line of growth toward that light. Then are explaining the whole collective life of man and the cultural activity of the human being. Then trying to see the modern problem. All that, you see, comes so much different that it's it's a new revelation in a certain sense. And one advantage is that there is one individual who is expressing himself in his own language. This is a great advantage of Sri Aurobindo. That he doesn't require a commentator. If you can go to the original, it is in his own words there. So you judge for yourself. Doesn't matter whether you agree or not. But it is not somebody else who is explaining him to you. Here it is himself who is speaking. So you know what to make of it. In the other cases of the Veda and Upanishad also, the difficulty is that, of course, they have expressed themselves in symbolic language. And now the explanation of the symbol is so difficult that somebody is required to explain the symbol. And then there will be difference in the people who explain. So they also have become, in one sense, very difficult, except Gita. And Gita is clear. Only its authorship is not known. They say it is said in the name of Krishna. Well, we hope it is true. Because the knowledge embodied is so vast and the synthesis is so wonderful and grand that certainly a divine spirit was behind it. There is no doubt about it. Call him Krishna or X or Y, it doesn't matter. But it must be a very great spirit. That is in somebody's own words. You can say it is one man's expression because the language and everything tends to show that nobody else has meddled into it. Somebody put it in the Mahabharata. Whether it was originally a part of the Mahabharata epic or not, we don't know. But Gita as such is one. There is no doubt about it. And it is clear as far as it goes. One man's authorship, his own exposition, and you can make what you like of it from the original without resorting to any commentary. It's open to you. While Sri Arunda's advantage is that he had the Western mind, the development of intellect, knowledge of modern problems, knowledge of modern attitude of man towards problems, and also the difficulties of man today. And then the knowledge of this inner life, the truth, and so on. So that makes a tremendous difference, you see, tremendous difference to the modern world. And one day, after 50 or 100 years, it is bound to make itself felt, I know. It is no question of time. Time is not important. Truth is important. And because it's such a cohesive, complete, synthetic, and integral expression of the truth meant for the modern mind, that modern mind has only discovered it. That's all. When it discovers it, finds that it is very satisfactory so far as mind seeking is concerned.
Purani, some people understand this, it's put in terms so that the mind can understand and accept and it can be consistent with the mental approach. And some people find, that it's too intellectual for it.
But the modern age is too intellectual, yes.
Or even just it doesn't appeal to them. Then,
Yeah, that's all. That's not there. That's not the fault
Yeah.
of Life Divine. It's their
No.
shortcoming. For them, he has written 2 or 3 books. You can recommend them.
Which ones are those?
Oh, any number. You see. First is this thoughts and glimpses. Thoughts and glimpses. Aphorisms. It will beat your any of these small current books hollow, which people go to with enthusiasm. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. You give them one, thoughts and glimpses, aphorisms, evolution, small book, and there is a fourth book. Well, you can say more lights on yoga.
How about the
The hour of God. The hour of God. Yes.
more lights on yoga?
Yes. More lights on yoga. The hour of God. Hmm.
Would the riddle of this world be one?
Yes, it can be, but it is intellectual.
To intellect?
No, yes, it is. It is answer. It is a answer to member of Académie Française.
No.
Maurice Magre. Maurice Magre came to Pondicherry and wrote a letter asking some questions. Say answer to academician of Paris. It is absolutely intellectual.
I know in the aphorisms, I think he says, reason is the helper.
Yes, yes, like that. There are many. Yes, yes, yes. Well, many things like that. In thoughts and glimpses, also you find, in aphorisms, you will find, and some of the right. Mother itself is a very fine book. If one can, Mother is wonderful. Mother's writings are very simple and very straight. You can give it to anybody who is, he will immediately follow it. That is a French temperament. Yes, direct and straight and clear, like that. When she used to read Sherlot's book, you see, his sentence wouldn't come to an end.
I know.
And he would, oh, she would say. Because you see, his mind is rich like that. It's a caparisoned elephant, and then it doesn't want to leave anything unsaid, and you can't add anything to it. That is our challenge. I challenge that in England. When I went to BBC people, I said, I challenge. Come. You add anything. You see, you will see, you can't change the comma there. The thought that takes 10 lines, but it is complete, absolutely all possibilities, reservations, or you see, no, qualifications, all adjectives, everything is like that. And nothing, no, you can't change. It is that. Comprehensive. You see, he is very comprehensive. And therefore he says, I say this, but supposing, no, then I must add this, then I must add this qualification and adjectives and reservations and something marvelous. As a thought, it's a feat if you can enjoy it. It's a feat of intellectuality, I tell you. I told some of my friends that don't read it for its spiritual stuff. You can't find an equally intellectually enjoyable stuff. It's a feat of intellectuality. His chapters on origin of ignorance, I challenge the whole world, there is none to come near it. 100 miles near it. I know what is intellectuality. These people are happy people, small people who have only little knowledge. Here is a vastness, here, origin of ignorance. When you read, you say, oh my God, in the world's philosophy, nobody ever thought of explaining ignorance in that way. It's a marvelous explanation. We'll come to it when we come to Life Divine.
Purani of the intellect, though, or the intellectual, isn't necessary for spiritual experience, is it?
Not necessary for spirituality, but one who has a developed intellect and is seeking, for him there is an answer. And there is a place for intellect in spiritual life. But for all people who seek spirituality, intellect is not indispensable, not at all.
Oh, been doing stuff.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There are plenty of people who don't have any intellectual training or have aptitude, and they are progressing in yoga quite all right. It doesn't require anything. This is an instrument which is given to nature, and if it is sincere and seeking, it can be satisfied. When it is egoistic and vain, you can never satisfy it. That's why he told in that letter that don't try to answer doubts because the spirit of doubt is insatiable. If one is submitting the spirit of doubt, you can never satisfy it because it doesn't want to be satisfied. It's no use trying. Chapter in the human cycles, which is marvelous. The supra-rational ultimate of life. Something that passes beyond intellectuality, marvelous. Something that you see is, you can put a problem and give you a solution. Nobody else can give you that. Nobody can. Supra-rational ultimate of life. It is in human cycles. One of the grandest chapters in his writings. Human cycle.
The great man of information.
Right. If you don't wish to answer this question now, I wish you just use your judgment. But I've been thinking about the suffering of Christ in Gethsemane in relation to pain and suffering. I don't know whether you wish to make any comment on that or not. So I.
No, it is a expression of universal love. His acceptance of being crucified is acceptance of expression of universal love.
His suffering.
Yes.
Yeah.
That how far love can be an expression of universal love. Well, if you want to see exemplified, well, you see it in Christ. You can say not only universal but divine love, for the matter of that.
Don't you think too that that Christianity has we might say, exaggerated the suffering, so that it's become almost
Easy.
what do you say? It's become a distortion. It's become a distortion of what Christ himself.
Not only that, Christianity as a religion, an organized religion, you leave aside. I am only answering Christ's personal, the fact that happened to him or the occurrence. Christianity as an institution has never followed Christ. So it is all right. I never.
But this is a tendency.
They have done good work and very great, service to mankind. I don't say that it has done disservice, but it has never followed Christ. That is true. Because Christ stood for a consciousness and a realization. And Christianity after the 13th or 14th century gave it up completely. With all due deference to social Christianity and this churchianity as they call it, well, it's all right, nothing wrong. That is why the Quakers revolted against it, you see. And what they came to, I don't know. But they stood for that realization for which Christ pleaded. That man has to realize his unity with the Creator or the Supreme. That was the basis. And that Christianity never seriously attempted. They gave themselves up to social good, service, piety, devotion, charity, which was good, quite good. It did a lot of good work. But it was taking away from the original intention of Christ. And in fact, church is not a creation of Christ, historically. If you study history, church is a creation of the disciples. You see, whether Christ left to himself would have created the church or not is a question. You can say that because these 12 disciples were sincere and they felt inspired to create this form, probably Christ's consciousness was behind it. But that is only a way of explaining to ourselves. But we can't put the whole responsibility on Christ, you see. That is not possible. The responsibility lies with the 12 disciples, you see. So the turn that Christianity took is not the turn probably intended by the founder, you see.
It isn't this a tendency of the human mind?
Yes.
Where this dogmatism and
Not only
almost like the law of
dogmatism. Yes,
gravitation.
yes. When religion becomes social function or social institution, it is always two portions that come into existence. One is the kernel, the eternal portion of the religious life, and outer forms. And it's the outer forms that win ultimately, and the inner spirit generally evaporates in outer religious forms. This has happened to all religions, including Hinduism. You see? To preserve the religious impulse is to reach a truth. Instead, it becomes to affirm some principle or believe in something or go through some ceremony, which is quite different thing. And later, as it went on developing, it became a social institution. They meet in a church just as they go to a ball or a dance or a cinema hall. That's all, a little different. What more? You go to meet 100 people at one time, whereas to meet those people, you have to take 100 appointments, which you can't afford in a week. So you go meet so many persons at one time and talk nonsense. Yes, all the time.
Get all
Who-
cleaned up.
Yes, what somebody has done and what somebody was doing, and he talk shop or talk climate, and that's all that is happening. Or now even in America when they meet, it is more to socialize that how shall you run the church? So let us have lottery, let us have this, let us have this.
Happy hours.
Yes, you see. Now, what has that to do with the ultimate aim of religious life? I mean, you see, they meet for society's sake. You see, for being social, it is not bad. Then you say social meeting, it's good. People meet, club, meet, you meet there. Why call it church? Where you are seriously devoted to satisfaction or activating a religious impulse, then it is all right. But somehow we must keep it alive. It is better if it is not living to allow it to die, so that something true and new can take its place. Now we are preserving a form with the danger that we are making ourselves believe that we are religious when we are not. What is use? Let us be religious. And frankly and honestly, religious is better than profess religion which has no basis. You see, it is better, frankly atheistic, and say no. This we enjoy life. Come on, what's the hurry? We can wait for eternity. There is no hurry. God is not knocking at our door, then don't worry. Enjoy life. What is that? There's nothing wrong in enjoying life. But if you say that this is for this purpose, then let it be for that purpose. If it has outlived the purpose, let it die. New institution will come. Before Christianity, what was there? Something was there, isn't it? After Christianity, something will arise. Let us not give up hope. Something new will come into its place to take its place. But if we keep a semblance alive or this dead form alive, the real thing takes time to come into existence.
Well, we won't get away from this, will we, Purani, until we get off of the mental plane. I mean, until we get into a higher
Well,
consciousness, because it will keep returning to dogmatism on the mental plane, won't it? Isn't that the natural?
Well, it is a question of allowing the higher power to work out. You see, we have to see that in all that impulse is working out in forms that are worth preserving and forms that are not worth preserving. Well, it is inertia is there, the upward drive is there, progressive tendency is there. On all the three or four are working together, and something is happening. What we have to do is that we stress the essential and follow it without, having disgust or dislike for anything. We don't want to run down anything and say this is wrong. Well, it is that is what they like. Let them like. But our perception of the essential is that the inner change must come from consciousness. That's all, and then we stick to it. Well, those people who feel called upon to try and tackle the problem differently, let them do. There is no question of our feeling superiority also, or our feeling essential, that this is more essential. And our perception is that, well, if they feel that there is another solution, let them try. No harm. We don't look down upon them.
Guruji, in going back to the talk, in your thought or in your elimination of suffering, you gave the four methods to take
Yes, yes.
surrender.
Hmm.
It seems to me that in back of all of these is the same identical thing. It seems like it all boils down to indifference.
No, indifference can happen in many ways. You see, when you put the endurance, you have to exercise your will. In another endurance, you have indifference, you have to exercise detachment. Udasinata, for instance, when you sit on a higher plane and watch your own personality going through what to outside is suffering, well, you are exercising a detachment. But when you put endurance, then you are putting forth your will in order to react equally to pleasure and to pain. You see, the force that is evoked is not the same. I mean, on the same plane. In one, there is a strength of vibration of will, in another is detachment of consciousness.
It seems like in back of all of them, though, is a form of withdrawal.
Not necessarily withdrawal. It's a form of meeting. In titiksha, you meet. In endurance, you meet the contact. I give you roughly the instance. For instance, cold and heat, nervous system. Then you put forth a reaction of equal reaction to cold and heat. That is endurance. That gives an idea. You see that there is a positive action. There is no withdrawal at all. There is a impact of consciousness to meet both shocks equally. That's all.
But isn't it a withdrawal from permitting the shock to be too deep?
No.
The endurance.
On the contrary, it is a return of the shock outside. It's really throwing out a greater vibration than the one that is given by heat or cold or pleasure or pain.
Is one more of the ego than the other? Is one more egotistical? The ego is the willpower more of the ego than detachment?
Not necessarily. Even the exercise of will can be impersonal.
Well, then,
Only the will is an aspect of power, whereas detachment more, acts on the basis of knowledge. That's all. In the one you stress the power aspect, and another you act upon the knowledge aspect. Or the subjective being detached from all the reactions of nature, prakriti.
then Purani, even if the Siksha were meeting in a positive context,
With
in
equal
this
indifference.
This is a withdrawal from it. It's saying not that. That in a sense is a withdrawal. If you surrender to it, that in a sense is the same, exactly the same withdrawal from it, surrendering to it, but not letting the effects touch you. That's a withdrawal. And the training to endure it, that too is a withdrawal. It seems like it's all the same level,
I don't think.
all of it.
I don't think, because withdrawal is not the solution of the problem, first of all. You see, the flow of life is expression. It is going out, manifestation. Now, any withdrawal would be only a negative solution. That way, Buddha also gave a sort of solution, which is a half solution, and that's why it couldn't get applied in life. That's why Buddhism had to go out of India. You see, it is possible to give a partial solution and say if you withdraw, yes, if you withdraw, you can go to only a temporary solution. You can't get a radical solution at all of the problem by withdrawal. Because withdrawal is not the law of the cosmos. Universe is a manifestation, avirbhav, they will call it. You see, it is self-expression. Withdrawal is want of expression.
Well, it's a want of expression. When you equalize pleasure and pain, you're making the hills level.
No. You are bringing into possible expression the experience of delight.
Isn't withdrawal as a form of expression?
You can say if you like, but ultimately the withdrawal will be judged only by what happens to the contact of life. What happens to the contact of life and how it is related to the ultimate aim of self-expression. If the withdrawal is in keeping with the aim of self-expression, well, it is a necessary condition. But ultimately, the withdrawal will have to transform itself into an equal experience of delight. That would be the solution so far as the basis of the chapter is concerned. You see?
It isn't a matter, except the evolved persons, most of us react according to a pattern of habit and social training,
Yes.
and it's more instantaneous and
Unconscious, yes, unthought of.
at first.
Yes.
So we have to reckon with that too. We have to see which way is easiest for us.
Yes, exactly. That's why 2 or 3 methods are suggested. You see, one in whom the nature is strong and powerful and likes to take up adventure and danger. Well, for him, titiksha, the endurance method is good. Warrior method. or one who is more, impersonal and wedded to intellectual life, for him titiksha, detachment is better, or one who is emotionally inclined, for him the submission to what comes as a dispensation of a higher power, and therefore an equal acceptance with without any normal reaction, for him tends to create some sense. So according to natural aptitude, one takes up the method, you see.